Thanks for coming out. We kick it off. I think we leave a week from yesterday, so it's upon us, and we head down to Corpus. We're going to head down Wednesday, practice Wednesday night, Thursday, and then jump right into it Friday. So it's been a awesome fall and into winter and now into early spring preparing, and we are ready to go.
All right, starting off with Shay.
Hey, Coach, how are you? Third year here, I believe. Just expectations your first year to this year. Do you remember what they were that first year? And do you get the butterflies? Do you get that sense of excitement that things are kind of starting to roll around here now?
For sure. The last part of the question first, I think that's always the sign for me that it's really go time. And had a Olympic sharpshooter speak to our team at Dallas Baptist years ago and talked about those butterflies, those nerves as just a form of adrenaline. He talked about in the Olympics how, his familiarity with that anxiety was to say, welcome back, old friend. And it's stuck with me ever since. And we talk a lot about that as a team. You can scrimmage in inter squad and do stuff in the fall, but, nothing like an actual game. And so, yeah, for sure have that feeling and that excitement to get going. I think in terms of expectations, I think I've brainwashed myself for a long time to really stay in the exact moment I'm in to prepare. And, I think in year one, there was so much of a culture shift of how do we redo the things that are important to us? How do we keep the things that are in a really good spot? And so year one was so much about establishing culture, and year two is about stepping it forward, and I think year three is about taking another step. Now, the expectations, I don't know. I've really tried to stay focused on next Friday night, but I know the guys have high expectations for themselves, and I know my staff does as well.
How important are the portal players to your rotation? And describe the big turnover for all college teams. Was it fun to rebuild the roster? Was it incredibly hard?
I think this entire process, I described it yesterday as it's been really hard and really rewarding and really fun. And we kind of came in with the mentality of trying to get old early so we could compete right away. And we did that, and the game's kind of evolved along that line of the portal's never been – the portal in baseball is incredibly talent rich. And so when we made the move in year one to get all the older guys, we knew we were going to put ourselves in a cycle of having to do it every year. Now, the good news is we all have experience doing it from our time doing it in junior college. And really, everywhere I've been so fortunate to have a bunch of players drafted every year that you kind of get into that. How do you put together the roster every year? So it's been really fun. My staff is fantastic at it. And we found incredible value in the portal, and I could, really having our bullpen. The guys that pitch in the middle of our bullpen this year are super portal rich, but it's been fun, man. We've had a blast doing it, and we feel like we got the right guys here.
Just following up on that, you brought in so many pitchers this past offseason from so many different levels of play and experience and all that. What was the process like of figuring out who would play and how much and when?
Specific to the pitchers? Yeah, I think there's some stats that don't travel from level to level. Strikeouts do. And when you look at punch-outs per nine, and if a guy does that in junior college, he's going to do it in Division I. If he does it in Division I, he's going to do it in Single A. If he does it in Single A, he's going to do it in Double A. And so strikeouts are a huge one. And it's the same thing with command. Like if you look at the ratio of punch-outs to walks and what type of, when the ball is put in play, not necessarily what's the outcomes, because there are so many variances off of what can happen, but is it line drives, is it fly balls, and really when it's strikeouts, there's an outcome. And so I think that was always a big one for us and one we look at a ton. And then, if we pulled 100 big league pitchers right now, and the most important stat that they'd want at the end of the year, it would be innings pitched. And the innings pitched one for us becomes huge because if all of a sudden vaguely more Stites, West, if those guys are logging huge innings as starters, that shrinks the amount of work that our bullpen needs to do, which we saw last year when Cranton would just go one inning at the end and Cooper Moore 1 inning before that, and Shaw and Lanth some combo before that, we were able to let Crant just come in and throw gas for 1 inning versus the year before where you have to stretch Trumper for 3 and you have to stretch Crant for more than 1. So I think innings pitched, strikeouts, and just overall efficiencies as a pitcher is something we spend a ton of time on.
You mentioned your starters there. Do you feel like you have your Friday, Saturday, Sunday guys figured out at this point, or are you going to let it sort of figure itself out?
Friday. Yeah. Dom's going on Friday.
Right.
Manning will go on Saturday this first weekend. Stites is back. He's 9-10 months into his progression in rehab from TJ, so he'll start in a limited pitch count on Sunday, and then someone will piggyback on top of him, and then we'll go Cooper Moore on Monday. And then, that will probably change in some form weekend 2 with Coop bumping back into maybe a higher spot in the rotation. But Stites really becomes kind of an opener, and a lot of big league teams use an opener, and for sure 2 years ago they used him all the time. It was a little less last summer, but Stites, as his pitch count continues to grow early in the year, he'll be in more of that opener, opening weekend. He's going to want to go 5 innings. He's going to go 2, and then weekend 3 hopefully he goes, or weekend 2 hopefully he goes 2 innings, and weekend 3, and can just keep stacking on there.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about the new turf and just your thoughts on the final product of it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Mammoth did a fantastic job, and our turf was really, really fast, and it had kind of changed. It changes the way you play at home versus on the road. And the last few weeks that we've been on it, it's been fantastic. It plays really true, very much like a grass field. It's gorgeous, and Mammoth did a fantastic job. And again, another piece of the build and another show of how awesome our administration has been in supporting it and putting us in a position to continue to grow the program. But yeah, it's fantastic. And then the video board on top of it's really going to change the experience out there.
How much of an asset for you guys is the defensive versatility that Michael Brooks provides and playing short more than he has in the past? Yeah,
it's big. That's probably the question that I juggle the most right now is, last year when we had Brooks at third and second, and then when we'd shift for a lefty, oftentimes we left him in the shortstop position, just trying to get him in as many touches as we could. He and Sawyer Smith have been neck and neck at shortstop, and then you get into the question mark of he's the best third baseman in the Big 12, and do you really move him off there when you have the versatility to know what you're getting there? So I think the good news is that we train all of our infielders like they play all 3 spots, and so I think we'll see, depending on lefty-righty matchups and who we're seeing, I think we'll see a bunch of Brooksy at third, and I think we'll see a bunch of them at short.
For those who aren't familiar with the KU baseball brand, what can you tell them what kind of style of play can you tell them to expect this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think anyone who's watched us the last 2 years has seen an extremely high care factor and an intensity and a togetherness and a real intensity to win and win together. I think we pride ourselves on playing baseball the right way and thinking through the game and not getting caught up in the peripheral things that get you off track. But I think we've done a good job. If you look at our pitchers, they're aggressive. They try to win the 17 inches across the strike zone, and our hitters try to protect that as hitters. And then defensively, we take a ton of pride in playing underneath the ball and not giving anything away. So I think people who watch us regularly appreciate the intensity and togetherness and the humility that our guys play with.
Coach, obviously a lot of new look talent, but how about the new look threads? Can you tell us about the Adidas latest lineup you've been rolling out this week?
We do have some sweet new jerseys. The gold standards are out. Those are awesome and really sharp look. I like those a lot. And then we've got a new blue that we can pair with our pinstripe pants or just the straight up whites or our road grays. And we need Demetrius here in Marbach. They kind of tell me what we're going to wear on a day-to-day basis. But and then the pinstripes are really sharp. So we don't have a standard white Friday night uniform, which threw me off a little bit. But we've got the gold standard creams, and we've got the pins, and then we've got a bunch of combinations with the blues.
This many people, as you had drafted last year, I guess, who do you think you're going to rely upon to fill those spots, and has that sort of list changed over the months that have happened since?
Yeah, when I think of our team in the draft, there were Shojinaga was not a surprise. Krant was a senior and not a surprise. Lanthier and Shaw were guys that I thought would get drafted. When it slipped to day 3, I thought there was a chance that they might come back. Hartle was, again, they were all certainly talented enough and deserving of it. But once we got to day 3, there was a little bit of a question mark on a couple of these guys might be back. But we had really prepared for it. And so when I think of the additions we've had to make up for those losses, the bullpen was a huge piece of it. And we had really addressed a lot of the other factors just through the natural cycle of recruiting, of knowing English would be gone, knowing Cranford would be gone, knowing Net would be gone. So a lot of the core position player things we were prepared for early. We had to adjust late with Hartle, so we picked up a couple really good catchers. But the bullpen was where, with Shaw and Lanth and Cranton, I mean, those are 3 monsters at the end. So I feel like we attacked that, and I think those roles are forming. I would say right now to get 3 outs at the end of the game, a lot will depend on what happens in our scrimmages tomorrow and Saturday and kind of how those guys perform at the back end. But you're splitting hairs at this point. It's the guy that gets the 3 outs in the 9th, that guy might get him in the 8th weekend one, or he might get him in the 7th weekend one. And one thing that's so unique about our sport is, how you manage a game in February is very different than, in May. Pitch counts are weird. I mean, can you imagine the football season starting and Lance has a quarterback for the first half of game 1, and then he's got to build. Like, it's an odd sport there. So the middle of our pen, between Kubler, Vitak, Magai, Trumper, I feel like you've got 4 guys that can stretch the game in the middle. And then Brandon Scott and I sit down for literally hours every night looking at, okay, if Dom gives us 4, where do we go if we're at this spot in the lineup? If he gives us 5, where do we go if we're at this spot in the lineup? And then you kind of have it mapped out, and then you get to those spots, and then early on you say, okay, if he gets 3 quick ones here, like when we played K-State this fall, we had one of those relievers go out and he threw 6 pitches. Well, that guy's going out for the next inning. And then it might be you just bump that guy back. And in a perfect world, you don't have to get your closer hot every night. So I feel like we addressed it. I think this specific roles still have to be won.
I know it's a week away, but any initial thoughts on Texas A&M Corpus Christi as the school you open with?
Yeah, they're good. They're like everyone else right now, a lot of new faces. They have 2 returning pitchers, and so in our scouting report, it's a lot of watching video and, guys not wearing a Corpus Christi uniform because they're transferred in from somewhere else. But it's like everywhere in college baseball right now, really everywhere in college sports. The rosters have changed dramatically. The consistent things with Corpus and Tarleton in terms of our first road trip, they're both really well coached, very fundamental. There's, pretty much straight up baseball with, they've got good starting pitching, they've got good back end, and they can defend in the middle. So be a great challenge. The other thing is they've both been outside for a long time. So there's a little bit of that, they're sweating in the South and we're getting outside in limited chunks here. But we'll be ready to go and excited for the challenge.
Everyone good?
Awesome. Thanks, guys.